After 7 years of living under the very roof I provided, my son and daughter-in-law suddenly struck gold with $85 million. But rather than showing gratitude for the sanctuary I'd given them, by midday that very afternoon, my daughter-in-law had viciously hurled all my possessions onto the lawn, porcelain exploding on the pavement while she shrieked, "We're done playing caretakers for you. Go rot away in some facility." I remained in the garden, garments dusty and crumpled, my pulse unwavering, and calmly stated, "Did you check whose signature is on that ticket?" Her triumphant expression faltered for an instant, and soon that simple question would make her glittering dreams crumble entirely. "If you're still with me, share where you're tuning in from. Every response you add is another footprint in this path. And if this account has moved you, don't forget to subscribe so it can travel even further." I'm Lorraine Whitmore, 63, widowed for almost 10 years. Since Arthur departed, the two-story residence in suburban Savannah, Georgia, became my soul sanctuary, and later Mason's refuge as well, along with his striking but excessively calculating wife, Belle. 7 years back when Mason was laid off and Belle was expecting, they appeared at my doorstep during an autumn storm. Drenched and trembling, I welcomed them, asked few questions, and simply stated, "Enter." This residence always has space for family. From that point forward, we coexisted 3 generations, seemingly harmonious until that fateful dawn. That dawn, I rose early as always, preparing coffee and waffles for the youngsters, Ava, 8, and Micah, 5. But instead of tiny footsteps chattering downstairs, I heard a cry pierce through the residence from below. "Mason, wake up, wake up!" Immediately Belle's piercing voice erupted, bursting with exhilaration. I placed the coffee maker down, pulse racing. I was accustomed to my daughter-in-law's temperament, but today carried something different: excitement, panic, almost frenzy. The wooden staircase trembled as Mason raced down. I remained at the upper landing, holding my breath. A moment of stillness. Then abruptly, exclamations erupted. "Impossible! Oh my God, impossible! We won! Mason, $85 million, $85 million. I glanced down and witnessed Belle clutching the lottery ticket, quivering with elation. Mason embraced her, laughing and repeating, "This can't be real. This can't be real." They both leaped around, tears cascading over young, desperate faces. "And I, the one who purchased that very ticket yesterday, with the numbers I've used for 20 years, each one a family anniversary," stood motionless. My heart plummeted, not because of the fortune, but because they never inquired, "Mom, is this your ticket?" I descended halfway down the staircase, about to speak, when Belle pivoted, eyes ablaze like someone who just unearthed buried treasure. "We're wealthy, Mason, finally. We don't have to remain in this ancient house anymore." She declared it and kissed the ticket like a prize. I halted. The words "this ancient house" pierced straight through me. The home Arthur and I constructed with every saved dollar, every additional shift, every coat of paint we applied with our own hands. I wanted to declare I was the one who purchased that ticket at the neighborhood convenience store, but the words lodged in my throat. I glanced at Mason, my only son, hoping he'd comprehend something. But he just stood there, letting Belle control everything like always. I returned to my cramped room in the attic, heart heavy. I prepared tea, but my hands trembled so violently I spilled water on the table. For the first time in years, I felt like an outsider in my own home. Approximately an hour later, I heard vehicles pulling up, curious neighbors arriving after hearing about the lottery family. Laughter, doors banging, glasses tinkling. I peered out the window and saw Belle showing off, waving the ticket, and Mason beside her, grinning awkwardly. By midday, there was a forceful knock on my door. Belle stood there, arms folded, lips twisted. "Begin packing. We're relocating, and we don't need any burdens tagging along." I didn't comprehend it initially. "Burdens?" I echoed, my voice uncertain. "Yeah, we're purchasing a mansion. It wouldn't be appropriate for you to accompany us. At your stage, it's wiser to locate a suitable nursing facility. They'll care for you there." I gazed into her eyes. "This is my residence, Belle. Used to be, Lorraine," she stated, stressing each syllable. "Now we have a new existence, and you're not included." Then she yanked open the wardrobe and began flinging my belongings, garments, the wedding photograph, a ceramic vase I crafted when I was younger. Everything went crashing into the garden below. I stood there silent while neighbors assembled and murmured. Mason stood at the threshold, hands in his pockets, face ashen, but he didn't intervene to halt his wife. "Belle, cease," he muttered. But she didn't heed. "We don't need to perform charity for you anymore," she yelled, as if she wanted the entire neighborhood to witness. The words felt like a dagger in my chest. I quietly bent down, retrieved the broken frame, and wiped the dust off with my sleeve. The elderly neighbor across the avenue hurried over to assist me gather belongings. But I stopped her. "Thank you, but I can manage." I collected what was still whole, a few changes of attire, a wedding photograph, and a small container holding Arthur's ring. When a worn yellow taxi pulled up, I stood, drew a long breath. I turned to Mason. My son, whom I'd once trusted, would defend his mother for life. "You're not going to say anything?" I inquired. Calm and steady. He looked down. "Belle just went slightly overboard." "Mom." "No, Mason," I stated. "This is the decision you two have made." I walked toward the entrance, then halted. Belle stood there, arms folded, still wearing that victorious grin. I looked directly at her. "Did you check whose signature is on that ticket?" For a split instant, that grin stalled. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her eyes. Then she quickly feigned contempt. "I have no clue what you're referring to." I didn't respond. I opened the taxi door, placed my suitcase in the trunk, and told the driver softly, "Anywhere with the most affordable rooms nearby." As the vehicle pulled away, I checked the rearview mirror. Mason stood frozen on the steps. The two youngsters pressed to the upstairs window, eyes crimson. Belle turned away, pretending to be on the phone, but I could observe her shoulders stiffen. The room I secured sat above a Thai restaurant. It barely accommodated a twin bed, a wobbly wooden table, and a window jammed in its frame. The aroma of frying garlic rose from downstairs, seeping into my hair and garments. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened my bag, and retrieved a paper folded in quarters, the purchase receipt. The scrawled Lorraine Whitmore in the signature box was still distinct. I ran my finger over the name and heard Arthur's voice in my ear. "Always sign your name, Lorraine. People can forget everything else, but a signature never lies." I smiled faintly. Outside, the city buzzed, but in that cramped room, I felt a strange tranquility. They thought I'd been defeated, but really, the game had only just commenced. After Arthur was laid to rest, the residence was so hushed, I could hear the clock ticking throughout the night. I missed him, his tall, lean frame, the way he complained when I added extra pepper to the stew, and that gravelly laugh every early dawn. Widowhood at 56 instructed me to speak less and maintain small rituals to feel like he was still present, pouring 2 cups of coffee each dawn, straightening the armchair by the fireplace, sometimes whispering, "I'm managing, Arthur." Then one February evening in a downpour, Mason appeared. He stood on the porch, drenched, gripping a suitcase. Behind him was Belle, makeup streaked, eyes crimson. "Mom, we lost the apartment. My company collapsed. The landlord demands rent now. We can't manage it." I opened the door without further inquiries and nodded. "Enter. This residence always has space for family." Belle thanked me, voice quavering. She was young, striking, and knew how to attract sympathy. That day, I believed I was doing the proper thing. I couldn't have imagined that Mason's just a few months would stretch into 7 years. 7 years of being the help in the very residence with my name on the deed. At first, circumstances seemed acceptable. I gave them the spacious downstairs room, the one Arthur cherished for its east-facing windows. "Morning sunlight is beneficial for the baby," I stated. Mason squeezed my hand and smiled. "Appreciate it, Mom. I'll repay you soon." But soon never arrived. After Ava was born, then Micah 2 years later, Belle didn't return to employment. Mason bounced between positions, some months bringing home nothing. I covered every utility expense, groceries, and the homeowner's insurance with my teacher's pension, and what little savings of Arthur's remained. I didn't regret it. I believed family affection balances itself, that when they achieved stability, they'd uplift me in return. I recalled Arthur's words before he departed. "If you can, don't let our child know hunger, Lorraine." So I did everything to keep the residence warm. Mornings, I woke at 5:00 a.m., prepared breakfast for everyone, packed Mason's lunch, and escorted Ava to preschool. Afternoons, I did laundry, cooked dinner, and rocked Micah to sleep. Everything operated like a clock I wound with my own hands. Then one day, Belle stated, "Mom, I require a tranquil space to work. My previous company is permitting me to do consulting from home. Perhaps you could relocate up to the attic. I'll convert your room into a home office." I hesitated. The attic was a storage area, low ceiling and sweltering in summer. But she stated it in that syrupy tone. "It's more secluded up there. You can rest without the youngsters making noise." I forced a smile. "If it's convenient for you, proceed." I didn't realize that decision pushed me to the top floor of my own residence and pushed me out of the role of mother in my family. From then onward, I officially became Miss Lorraine upstairs. Belle reorganized the kitchen and labeled everything top shelf for the youngsters, bottom shelf for Mason's snacks. "That cabinet is where you can keep your tea." I didn't object, but I felt like a tenant. That winter, she commenced hosting adults-only dinners. I still cooked and arranged the table. But when dinner commenced, Belle would smile and state, "Mom, I saved you a plate in the kitchen. We need to discuss business." I stepped out, closed the kitchen door, and ate alone under the yellow light. From the living room came laughter, clinking glasses, and Belle conversing like the lady of the residence. I kept telling myself, it's acceptable. They are young. They have their own existence. I just need to remain quiet. But silence, when prolonged enough, becomes shackles. When Ava commenced talking, Belle instructed her to call me Miss Lorraine instead of Grandma. Grandma sounds peculiar in her mouth. "Mom," she stated, "Miss Lorraine is younger and more polite." I laughed it off, but that evening I cried in the bathroom. The following day I still prepared my granddaughter's milk, as if nothing had occurred. In the third year, Mason switched to part-time engineering. I inquired about his pay. He avoided my eyes. "Enough to survive, Mom." I knew it wasn't accurate, but didn't press. When your child looks down out of shame, a mother often chooses to pretend not to notice. I kept paying for electricity, water, health insurance, and sometimes slipped in extra for Ava's tuition. I told myself I could shoulder it as long as they stayed afloat. By the fourth year, Belle began establishing rules. "Mom, no sweets for the youngsters at night." "Mom, the residence needs to be spotless, guests are arriving." "Mom, towels should be folded this way, not the previous way." Each thing sounded trivial, but together they nicked like 1,000 paper cuts. I listened. I complied. I swallowed it. Once I prepared Arthur's favorite stew. The aroma filled the kitchen. Mason breathed in deeply. "Man, it's been ages." Belle frowned. "Red meat is packed with cholesterol. Mason, you don't want to perish young like your dad, do you?" The table fell silent. I looked down at my plate and murmured, "Your dad consumed this up to 85 and was still healthy." She smirked. "Different times, Mom." After that dinner, I understood. In this residence, I was no longer permitted to cook from memory. Mason wasn't heartless, just weak. When I stated Belle was going too far, he sighed. "She's under considerable pressure. Mom, I'm gone all day and she's home with 2 youngsters and taking care of the entire residence." I wanted to state, but didn't, that I was the one who actually took care of everything. Sometimes I overheard Belle on the phone with friends. "I'm living with my mother-in-law. It's so challenging. She interferes in everything." Each time I wondered who she was referring to because I hardly meddled in anything anymore. I just quietly cleaned, did laundry, and recorded expenses in a small notebook. I still recall a spring dawn. I was hanging laundry in the backyard when I heard Belle in the kitchen telling Mason, "Do you realize how people perceive us? A married couple living off his elderly mother. I want a place of our own, but Mom pays the homeowner's insurance here. Selling's not that simple. Then have her sign the transfer. She doesn't require a spacious residence anyway." I stood behind the curtain, pulse pounding, not from fear, but because I realized I'd given them too much, piece by piece, until they believed everything they possessed was theirs by entitlement. That summer, I commenced journaling. Every evening, I opened an aged leather notebook. The first line was always the same: "Day of patience." I didn't write much more, just small notes. Belle complained about towels. Mason forgot to collect Ava. Micah was ill. I stayed up all evening. Tiny crooked lines, like the trace of someone fading from her own existence. Even so, one thing in me never extinguished: tenderness. I loved Mason, the boy who used to carry me piggyback when my back ached. I loved the two youngsters who laughed every time I baked brownies. I even loved Belle, though she hurt me maybe because I believed people can change. That one day they'd understand I did everything out of affection. But patience has limits. And what shattered it wasn't a massive fight, just a trivial thing. So trivial that if I mentioned it, people might think I was overreacting. Yet I recall that afternoon perfectly sunlight slanting through the window when Belle stated one sentence that completely shattered my endurance. Ava's 10th birthday arrived on a radiant April day, the garden filled with azalea fragrance. I still recall her eyes when she pointed to the sign in the sporting goods store, a turquoise bicycle with a white wicker basket and shimmering ribbons trailing in the breeze. "Grandma, if I possessed that bike, I'd never be tardy for school again," she beamed. I smiled too, with a resolve in my chest. I knew the price of that bike, $200, almost all of what was left of my pension, after paying that month's expenses. I hesitated many times, then still decided to purchase it. I saved every spare coin, cut my spending for weeks, even surrendered my favorite almond milk. She's only 10 once, I told myself, and sometimes one gift can make a childhood feel complete. 3 days before Ava's birthday, I quietly walked to the shop in town. The clerk, a curly-haired young man, assisted me in selecting the exact turquoise bike she adored. I requested silver wrapping paper with sunflowers printed on it, tied with a white ribbon. When the paper caught the sunlight, I smiled, imagining my granddaughter's shining face. I concealed the bike in the garage and threw an aged cloth over it. I couldn't sleep all evening, replaying the moment Ava would witness it. Arthur would have smiled if he were still here. He used to state, "Sometimes the smallest gift becomes the biggest memory." I wanted to give her a memory like that. On the dawn of her birthday, I rose earlier than usual. I prepared heart-shaped waffles topped with blueberries and whipped cream. The kitchen smelled wonderful. I hung a few balloons by the window and positioned a vase of white roses in the center of the table. The residents rarely felt that cheerful. I put on the aged blue dress Arthur once complimented and felt a few years younger. Ava raced down the stairs, blonde pigtails bouncing, clapping and singing, "It's my birthday, Grandma, you recalled." I opened my arms and embraced her. "Of course, sweetheart. I have a surprise for you." I hadn't finished the sentence when Belle walked in wrinkled pajamas, hair pinned high. She glanced around, frowning at the balloons and blueberries. "Mom, what is all this? We didn't need to make a spectacle. It's just breakfast for Ava." "It didn't cost much," I answered gently. She opened the refrigerator, poured a glass of orange juice, then turned back, voice syrupy. "You realize, Mason and I already agreed this year we want to teach her about saving. No costly gifts. We want her to comprehend the value of money." I glanced at Ava and witnessed her smile dim. I tried to remain composed. "Don't worry, I only acquired a modest present, nothing extravagant." Belle raised an eyebrow. "Modest, huh?" I smiled. "You'll witness tonight." She stayed quiet, but her eyes were suspicious. I knew Belle didn't appreciate me doing anything that might make her appear inferior in front of the youngsters. With her, everything I did had an angle. That afternoon, when Mason brought the youngsters home from school, I retrieved the garage key. "Ava, come here with Grandma," I called. She raced over, eyes lighting up as I pulled back the cloth to reveal the shimmering turquoise bike. "Oh my goodness, it's stunning," Ava gasped, almost breathless. "Is it genuinely mine, Grandma?" I nodded. "Happy birthday, my little angel." She threw her arms around me, laughing and crying simultaneously. My heart melted with happiness, but the moment lasted only seconds. Belle's voice cut in behind us, cold as steel. "What is this?" She came closer, eyes raking over the bike, then stared straight at me. "I told you, Mom, no costly gifts." I stayed composed. "It's just a bike, Belle. She's dreamed about it all year." "That's not the point. The point is you're breaking our parenting guidelines." "Guidelines," I repeated with a small smile. I don't recall affection having guidelines. She stepped in, voice low and sharp as a blade. "You did this just to demonstrate to the youngsters you're superior to me, didn't you?" "Belle, don't be ridiculous," Mason chimed in. But his voice was weak. I gazed at her. "I did it because I love my granddaughter. That's all." Ava gripped my hand, frightened by her parents arguing. "Mom, please. I'll clean the bike myself. I won't request any more presents," she sobbed. But Belle just sighed, then crouched to Ava's eye level. Sweetie, we just want you to learn to appreciate things. This bike isn't appropriate. Grandma will return it, and then you'll comprehend why grown-ups have to save. No, Ava burst into tears. I held her, feeling her little heart thudding against my chest. That's sufficient, Belle, I stated, my voice tight. If you want to teach a lesson, use your own money, not her joy. She only pressed her lips together and pulled out her phone. Mom, return the bike or I will. I'm not jesting. That afternoon, I walked the bike back to the store, each step heavy as stone. The breeze rustled through the trees, making the white ribbon flutter and whisper like Ava's laughter that dawn. I took one last glance before stepping inside and drew a deep breath. I'd like to return this bike, I told the curly-haired clerk. Are you certain? Ma'am, it's our last one. Yes. The little girl changed her mind. When I signed the refund slip, my hand trembled so much the ink smeared. I folded the receipt and tucked it into my wallet. As I departed, a light drizzle started. Cold drops hit my cheeks, mixing with the salty taste at the corner of my mouth. That evening, the residence was quiet. No cake, no candles, just the TV murmuring in the living room. I set out the small cake. I'd already purchased a simple vanilla butter cake on the kitchen table and placed the card I'd written. Happy birthday, Ava. Love you always, Grandma. Then I lit a tiny candle and watched it burn down the flicker, reflecting on Arthur's photo on the wall. Do you witness this? I whispered. Our granddaughter isn't permitted to receive a bicycle because of a lesson on saving. I don't have enough say in my own residence anymore. I stood, put on my coat, and stepped outside. The April evening was colder than I expected. The neighborhood store cast a dim yellow glow, the one where I usually purchased milk. I had no plan, just knew I needed air. The shop was nearly empty. The owner, a familiar Italian gentleman, smiled. Cold evening, Miss Lorraine. Still want coffee? I shook my head. Then my eyes stopped at the lottery counter next to the register. A small sign read, Jackpot tomorrow evening, $85 million. I gave a tired, wry smile. One ticket, please. With these numbers, I slowly read the familiar sequence. 10, 14, 21, 25, 30, 41, 47. Birthdays for Arthur, May, Mason, and the two youngsters. The numbers I'd played for 20 years, an aged habit that never meant much. I pulled out a pen and signed the back. Lorraine Whitmore. Arthur's aged rule. Always sign and keep the receipt. Lorraine, people can argue plenty, but they can't fake a signature. I smiled at the owner, slid the ticket and receipt into my coat pocket. I could use a bit of luck tonight. He replied, hope you acquire what you're wishing for. On the way home, I glanced at the lit windows in the dark and wondered how many people inside were as exhausted as I was still trying to believe in good, even when hurt by their own family. I wasn't hoping for wealth. I was requesting one simple thing, a way out. When I arrived home, I placed the ticket and receipt on the kitchen table, right where anyone could witness, as if laying down a quiet prayer to the universe. Then I went up to the attic and listened to the drizzle tapping on the roof. The following dawn, as the first light slipped through the window, I heard Belle shriek downstairs, her voice high with excitement. Mason, wake up now, we won. Rushed footsteps, then a burst of laughter, quick kisses, a chair scraping. 85 million. Oh my God, we won 85 million. I sat up, pulse pounding. I didn't need to glance to know which ticket they were holding. I stepped onto the stairs and looked down at a scene both familiar and strange. Belle clinging to Mason. Tears of joy. The ticket held high, the ticket I had purchased. I can't believe it. Who'd have thought? Just picked it up off the table, and our existence changed, Belle yelled, buzzing with excitement. Maybe someone forgot it, but it's ours now, Mason laughed, hugging her tight. I stood still on the staircase. What started with a returned bicycle was turning into a storm I'd never imagined. I stated nothing. I just watched the two people I'd supported for 7 years dancing around my kitchen, as if fate had handed them a reward. I closed my eyes and told myself, stay quiet, Lorraine. Let them think they've won. I wanted to witness how far their greed would take them, and whether on that road they'd have enough conscience to realize the ticket was never theirs. 3 days after they won, the phone in my rented room rang off the hook at 7 a.m. I didn't pick up in time before it rang again, urgent, as if someone were racing the clock. This is Grant Holloway. counsel for the Georgia State Lottery, a calm baritone stated. I need to verify a few details about the lottery ticket registered to Lorraine Whitmore. Is now a suitable time? I paused, pulse quickening. Yes, I'm the one who purchased that ticket. Papers rustled on his end. We've matched the signature, serial number, and our system records. The ticket was registered under the name Lorraine Whitmore, former Savannah address. Correct. Correct. Then congratulations. You're the grand prize winner, $85 million. I was quiet for a few seconds. Not because I was surprised, but because a strange feeling rose in me, not exactly joy. Not shock, more like when a storm you witnessed from miles away finally arrives. Mr. Holloway continued, his tone turning serious. But I need you to be aware third parties have contacted the commission, claiming to be the legitimate owner of the ticket. A woman named Belle Carter Whitmore. I closed my eyes and smiled. I'm guessing she didn't forget the hyphenated last name. Not at all, he stated, a bit surprised at my composure. She claims the ticket was purchased with marital funds and that you, pardon my bluntness, are no longer competent to manage assets. I let out a small laugh. Steady. They haven't changed. When they can't take something, they try to convince others I'm not intelligent enough to keep it. I heard typing on his end. Could you confirm a few items so we can protect your legal rights? The back signature, your ID number, and proof of purchase time. I opened my wallet and pulled out the receipt I'd sealed between two laminates. I have the receipt. Benny's Corner Mart. Purchase time, 7:43 p.m. Friday, April 12th. The serial number matches the ticket. I also have copies of my ID, and the store camera will demonstrate it. I spoke clearly, without a hint of hesitation. On the other end, Holloway's voice dropped. Impressed. Excellent. That's sufficient to affirm you as the lawful owner. However, I should warn you, these folks seem prepared to cause trouble. They may push rumors that you're confused or even forge medical records. I sighed but didn't waver. Don't worry. I'm accustomed to their labeling games. In my existence, I've had many tags: weak, stubborn, old-fashioned. One more won't matter. A beat of silence, then he stated slowly, you're the calmest person I've ever told they've won $85 million. I gave a small smile. Because to me, the real prize isn't the fortune, it's the truth. Before ending the call, he reminded me, the claim window is 10 days from today. If you need it, we can arrange security or independent financial advisors. I thanked him, then stated, I'll make arrangements, but give me a few days. I want to witness how far their performance goes. After the call, I sat still for a long time. Morning light slipped through the small window and washed over the peeling gray wall. I felt caught between two worlds. On one side, the shabby room that smelled like fried garlic. On the other, the people who just declared themselves millionaires with my fortune. I pulled out my aged notebook and wrote a few lines. Day 1 after the win. I'm still impoverished but richer than they are in one way. I still have my self-respect. I closed the notebook and dialed Penelope Banks, my neighbor of 30 years. Penelope is the kind of woman everyone respects, serious, fair, and allergic to show-offs. Lorraine, good Lord, where are you? The entire neighborhood's discussing your lottery win. I knocked a few times and only witnessed your daughter-in-law. She stated you went on vacation. I laughed. Yeah, I'm on vacation somewhere with no air conditioning, no people, and an aroma of grease in my hair. What on earth? Pen, I need a favor. Watch the residents for a few days. Note dates, plates, what vehicles show up. I want to witness how fast they burn through cash. Penelope was quiet a few seconds, then inquired softly, what are you going to do? Lorraine, I'm not going to do anything, I stated lightly. I just want the truth to surface at the appropriate time, in the appropriate place. In the afternoon, I stopped by First Southern Bank and opened a small safe deposit box. The young teller inquired, what will you be storing? Ma'am, my future, I stated, placing inside the original receipt, a photocopy of the ticket, and copies of my ID. I kept scans and a few photos on my phone. I've learned that sometimes justice needs to be kept in more than one drawer. As I departed the bank, I caught my reflection in the glass, an older woman with silver hair, a gray cardigan, and an oddly steady gaze. Arthur used to tell me, you're gentle but when pushed, you turn into ice. Today, I understood he was right. I walked back and stopped at a sidewalk cafe small, with just a few people reading the paper. I ordered a hot black coffee, pulled out my notebook, and began to write. Saturday, 10:00 a.m. They still think I'm weak. They don't realize the ticket has already spoken for me. I'm not fleeing. I'm preparing. Every lie is a trap, and all I have to do is wait for the snap. That evening, when the city lights came on, I received the first text from Mason. Mom, we want to talk. Belle is stressed. Don't believe what the papers are stating. The papers. I opened my phone and sure enough, a local site had posted. Savannah couple wins jackpot. Elderly mother gifts ticket to her son then disappears. I laughed out loud. Even their lies were clumsy, I murmured. Congratulations, Belle. You just publicly admitted I purchased the ticket. I texted Mason back. Don't worry. I'm not missing. I'm just seeing clearly who's genuine and who isn't. Then I turned off my phone and lay back on the bed. Drizzle ticked against the window. I didn't know where they were, maybe touring mansions, maybe ordering a new vehicle, maybe planning a new millionaire party. But I knew one thing. The rules had changed. From the moment the signature Lorraine Whitmore appeared on the back of the ticket, they could lie, they could threaten, but they couldn't erase the truth. I put my hand on the notebook and wrote one last line before turning out the light. Tomorrow, when they purchase more vehicles, more dresses, more lies, I'll just smile. Because this game isn't about fortune. It's about character. I used to think greed only manifests when people are desperate. Turns out it flourishes even bigger when they acquire something they never deserved. Just 3 days after the win, Belle commenced performing like a celebrity. She created a new social media account called The Lucky Whitmore on flashy live streams. She wore an ivory silk dress, held a glass of champagne, and smiled sweet as honey. Life can be remarkably fair, she told thousands of viewers. If you do the proper thing, the universe will send a reward. I watched that video on my aged phone in the rented room, half amused and half heartsick, because in that line about the universe rewarding people who do the proper thing, Belle was implying I was the opposite, an aged senile freeloader living off her youngsters. On her live stream, she stated, "My mother-in-law once promised to gift the ticket to the family, and we didn't want to accept it, but she insisted." Every line was crafted to sound grateful while planting doubt. I read the comments below. So fortunate to have such a generous mother-in-law. She must genuinely love her daughter-in-law. And one that stung my eyes. Hope the elderly lady doesn't try to reclaim what she gave. They didn't realize. They hadn't witnessed Belle's genuine face. But they would. That dawn, Penelope called. "Lorraine, you won't believe it. The entire neighborhood is buzzing about your residence. Furniture trucks, flower deliveries, even a brand new SUV parked right out front, the dealer sticker still on." I chuckled. I believe it. Pen. I even know the color black with a silver sheen. Sporty model. Correct. She burst out laughing. Exactly, you're psychic. No need to guess. Pen. With Belle, the bigger the better as long as someone is observing. At noons, Penelope sent photographs. Belle posing at the front door, holding a bouquet of white lilies next to a sign that read "The Whitmore Residence." Mason forced a smile beside her, while the two youngsters were dressed in matching white outfits, more like advertisement models than children. "White lilies," I murmured. Arthur used to state, "Nothing is emptier than a white lily, beautiful, but no fragrance." I've never heard a truer line. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Belle. Her voice was candy sweet, nothing like the tone of someone who'd thrown me out of my own residence. "Miss Lorraine, I just want a gentle chat. We're family, correct?" I stayed silent. "About the ticket," she went on. "There's probably a small mix-up. I just need you to sign a brief confirmation that it isn't yours. It's only to assist the bank process things faster." I gave a small laugh. "Belle, when did you check whose signature is on that ticket?" Lorraine's question may sound gentle, but it's stronger than any revenge. If you've ever been misunderstood or looked down on like she was, would you stay silent or speak up like that? Share how you feel below. Sometimes one honest comment is sufficient to give strength to someone going through the same thing. Dead silence on the other end. The pause stretched so long I could hear her breathing quicken. Then she changed the subject. "People online are stating you're not in a stable situation. I'm just worried someone might exploit you." I cut in. "Appreciate the concern, but the only person who's ever exploited me is the one on this call." I hung up, and when I glanced out the window, drizzle began to fall, each drop tapping the foggy glass like a signal that a storm was approaching. The following evening, an email arrived from the attorney. Miss Lorraine, we just received a letter from the law office of Carter Whitmore Family Holdings. It alleges you lack the financial and mental capacity to manage assets and requests that financial guardianship be transferred to your son, Mason Whitmore. I wasn't surprised. I knew Belle would play this card, attacking with the senile mother image she'd seated in public. Still, I inquired, what do you think, Holloway? He gave a short, wry laugh. I think it's a terrible play. They don't comprehend the law. Your signature, the original receipt, the purchase data, they're all solid. If they push this, they'll cause trouble for themselves. Then let them keep going, I stated. The farther they walk, the more footprints they leave. The following day, Penelope called again, voice lowered to a near whisper. Lorraine, I've heard them arguing all afternoon. Mason yelled, sneeze it, this is my mother, and Belle screamed. Absolutely not. If you don't take my side, you lose everything. I closed my eyes. Mason's image flashed in my mind, the little boy who once pedaled his bike around the garden, who promised, I'll defend you forever, Mom. Now he was stuck between his mother and a wife, draining his soul. I didn't blame him. I was just sad. Sometimes affection can make people blind. I lit a small candle and placed it by Arthur's photo on the table. The light washed over his gentle, steady face just like before. Do you witness this, Arthur? I whispered. I did what you requested. I'm not bowing my head anymore. I'll stand tall even if I'm standing alone. I sat a long time watching the flame tremble. Every time a draft slipped through the door frame, the flame wavered but didn't extinguish. In it, I saw myself, maybe shaky, but still shining. I opened my notebook and wrote a new page. Mason called at 6:45 this dawn. Voice shaking. Mom, did you purchase the ticket? I stated. Yes. He went silent. Then inquired, how much did Belle already spend? I stated. Why are you asking? He stated, and I'll never forget this because I just discovered she put deposits on 2 vehicles, down payment on a mansion on Tybee Island, signed a furniture contract, even paid for Europe trip, all from a pending funds account. They stated the fortune would arrive soon. I sat on the aged plastic chair and listened, each word cutting like a blade. So I inquired quietly, you spent fortune you didn't possess. Mason was silent. I thought he'd make excuses, but he didn't. Just a sigh and a faint rustle like he was raking his hand through his hair. I closed my eyes. Mason, for 7 years, who paid the electric expense, the water, the insurance, the youngsters' schooling? No answer. I repeated, slower. Who? Mason. After a heavy few seconds, he stated softly, you did. Correct, I stated. May. The person you stated was living off you, the one thrown out of her own residence, the one labeled not competent, and now you're calling to inquire if the ticket is mine. Mason's voice trembled. I didn't realize Belle would do that. She stated she thought you wouldn't reclaim it. I gave a small, bitter laugh. She doesn't comprehend me. Mason, I can forgive being impoverished. I can't forgive deception. I paused, then stated slowly, you want to talk? Fine. Come to where I am. Today, 2:00 p.m. Mason was quiet. I heard an engine start on his end. Mom, I'll come. Good, I stated. But bring the truth. No gifts, no excuses, just the truth. After the call, I glanced around my little room, not fancy, not tidy, but the only place still mine. The peeling wooden table, the aged beige curtain, the slightly crooked plastic chair where I wrote every eve. I wiped the dust off the chair, steadied its legs, then opened the window to let in the dawn air with its mix of fried garlic and coffee from the restaurant downstairs. That aroma used to bother me, but today it made me feel alive, like I'd stepped back into a genuine rhythm of living. No longer faking niceness to keep anyone happy. Before the meeting time, the phone rang again. It was Attorney Holloway. Miss Whitmore, he stated, I've secured an identity verification and prize, claim slot for you 3:00 p.m. tomorrow at the main office. Please arrive 15 minutes early. I nodded, even though he couldn't witness me. Thank you, Grant. This is almost over. Do you want us to alert the press? In cases like yours, the media is remarkably interested. I answered, not yet. I want a few people to know the truth before the world does. After the call, I brewed a pot of peppermint tea. The fresh fragrance filled the room, blending with the soft noon light. I sat at the table, opened my notebook, and wrote one more line. Monday, 6:45. My son inquired, "Did you purchase the ticket?" I answered, "Yes, maybe this dawn." For the first time in 7 years, he heard his mother's genuine voice. I closed the notebook and set it beside the cup. On the walls, an aged family photo hung slightly crooked. And at me, Arthur, and 5-year-old Mason stood in front of the first residence we purchased. Sunlight lit our faces bright and tranquil. I touched the faded frame. "Arthur," I whispered, "if you were here, what would you do? Would you forgive him?" I answered myself in silence. "Maybe you would." "I won't. Not yet." I poured more water into the pot, and the steam fogged the window. Each bead on the glass reflected a memory Mason's first day of school and the lunch I packed. Arthur laughing, stating the boy looked just like him. Then the funeral, the driving drizzle, and me standing alone as the casket was lowered. That day I promised to defend our son at all costs. But it turns out sometimes defending means letting him face his own mistakes. It wasn't even 2:00 yet, but I was prepared. I arranged the table, set 2 cups of tea and a small plate of brownies. Nothing fancy, just my habit. Older folks like me tend to make things comfortable before serious conversations. I threw the window wide so the light would fall across the tablecloth and make the room feel less gloomy. Outside, traffic was picking up. I heard youngsters laughing on the avenue and an elderly lady greeting customers at the cafe across the way. Life went on as usual while I was getting prepared for the most important confrontation of my existence. Not in a courtroom, but with the son I brought into this world. I glanced at the clock. 1:47. It wasn't time yet, but my pulse was beating harder, not from fear, but from keeping myself steady. I wanted Mason to witness clearly. His mother is not the weak, confused woman Belle painted me to be. I wanted every word I stated to carry the weight of a truth they had tried to bury. A breeze moved through, carrying the fragrance of mint out to the porch. I sat down, placed my hand on my notebook, and told myself, if you choose conscience, I'll save you. If you choose silence, let the law do the rest. I turned the teacup slightly and watched the little circles ripple across the surface. Each ring a symbol of 7 years of pressure, 7 years of endurance, 7 years of unconditional affection. Now each ring was fading into the next, leaving the surface still like my pulse before the storm. 1 more hour and Mason would walk through that door. I told myself, this time you won't only meet your mother. You'll meet the woman you and your wife woke up, the woman you should never have underestimated. I took the first sip of tea, the warmth sliding down my throat. Sunlight tilted across the aged wall, leaving a soft band of light like a promise. Outside, a light breeze brushed the window frame, and the wind chime gave a gentle ring. I glanced at the empty chair across from me and stated out loud, "Son, I'm waiting." A knock sounded right at 2 p.m., not early, not late. I stood, feeling not nervous, but oddly as if I were about to preside over a hearing. The door opened. Mason stood there, pale, hair mussed, eyes sunken. He glanced around the shabby room, the stained ceiling, the lopsided single bed, the dampness in the corner, then looked back at me, voice tight. "I'm sorry, Mom." Just 4 words. But I knew he'd crossed a long evening to state them. I didn't answer, just motioned to the chair I'd wiped down that dawn. "Sit, Mason. This room isn't pretty, but at least it's mine." He lowered his head, avoiding my eyes. The dim light through the window cast our silhouettes across the blotchy wall, 2 figures close yet far. Not 5 minutes later, Belle appeared. Her heels struck sharp on the concrete, a sweet, biting perfume swamped the lingering fryer aroma from downstairs. She swept in, scanned the room, and smirked. "Cozy, isn't it?" I calmly set my cup down. "It's warm because there are no lies in here, Belle." She shrugged, perched on the edge of the bed, and pulled out her phone like she was at some fancy meeting. Mason glanced from her to me. Awkward. I decided not to drag out the pretending. "I'll be brief," I stated. "This dawn, the lottery's attorney confirmed it. The name on the ticket is Lorraine Whitmore. The payout account is set. The fortune will transfer within 24 hours. The room went still. Mason swallowed. After a few seconds, Belle gave a thin laugh. "So you plan to keep it all?" I met her eyes. "I plan to keep what's mine." Mason lifted a hand. Mom, I didn't come to fight. I just thought maybe we could make an arrangement like a family agreement so no one has to go to court. I smiled slightly sorrow from 7 buried years behind it. An arrangement. Mason, I've been making arrangements for 7 years. I arranged by staying silent when I was insulted. I arranged by paying the power expense when you were unemployed. I arranged by babysitting all day while your wife called me a freeloader. And the final arrangement, letting you throw my belongings out the window and stating nothing. Mason stared at his lap. Belle sat straight, expression flat. She gave a light, scripted chuckle. You misunderstand. I just think if we cooperate, everyone wins. We could purchase a spacious residence. You could live with us, have your own private suite, your own little kitchen, your own bath, every comfort. I lifted my head, voice cold as steel. A private suite in your estate. That's correct, Belle stated quickly, thinking I'd softened. Quiet, airy, private just for you. I gazed at her, letting my eyes settle on that fake smile. Sounds more like a kennel out back than a mother's room. She froze, color draining. Mason commenced to speak, but I raised a hand. Before we discuss cooperation, I need answers, short ones. I opened a drawer and retrieved a folded paper, the expense log I'd kept for 7 years. I laid it on the table. First question, I stated, eyes on Belle, who threw my belongings out the window that dawn. She rolled her eyes. You know, I just lost my temper slightly. So you admit it, I cut in. Second question, who called me a freeloader, a useless dependent? She gave a bitter smile. What do you want, an apology? I want the truth. And if you need a refresher, Mason was standing right there. He can confirm. Mason drew a breath, voice shaking. Mom, yes. Belle stated it. I heard everything. Belle snapped toward him, eyes blazing. What are you doing? I'm telling the truth, Mason stated, and for the first time in years, there was a little courage in his tone. The cramped room felt tight as a wire. Belle's hands were clenched white. I went on, quiet but clear. Thank you, Mason. You finally stated what you should have stated 7 years ago. I unfolded the paper and read, careful line by line. Electric expense $118 a month. 7 years. Water about $42. Roof repair in 2018 $1,400. Ava and Micah's school costs a total of $18,600. Groceries, medicine, household goods can't even count. I folded the paper and set it down. All from my pension. I'm not stating this to collect. I'm reminding you these numbers are evidence of kindness, not obligation. With no way to dodge, Belle commenced to fray. You think you're a saint. You give and now you're keeping score. If you don't sign a transfer, I'll sue you for asset fraud. Mason flinched. Belle, please. But I was already on my feet, calmer than even I expected. I pointed to the door, still slightly open. You're free to depart. Belle. No threats, no theater. The court isn't far. Life will instruct you for me. She shot up, eyes burning. You'll regret this. I cut in. No, you will. When you learn fortune can't purchase 1 second of tranquility. When the youngsters commence asking why grandma isn't home anymore. When your husband stops bowing his head. Then you'll realize who's truly pitiable. Her mouth opened but nothing came out. Her face went from crimson to white. Then, without a word, she turned heels, hammering the floor, and the door slammed like a gavel. Silence again. Just me and Mason. He bowed his head low. Mom, I don't know what to state. I let it go too far. I gazed at my son, his face gaunt, but for the first time in years, his eyes held a little honesty. Just remember, I stated, low but gentle, every mistake has a price. The only price I want from you is the truth. He nodded, eyes wet. Can you forgive me? I sighed softly. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, Mason. It's remembering and choosing not to take revenge. I stood and set a hand on his shoulder. Now go take care of the youngsters. Tomorrow I'll claim the fortune. After that we'll talk again, if you still want a mother. Mason squeezed my hand, then departed. When the door clicked shut, the room fell quiet. I sat and glanced at the 2 teacups, one still warm, one gone cold. I knew the line between us was like those 2 cups, once the same fragrance, no longer the same moment. I lit another candle and wrote in my notebook. This afternoon, the rented room became a courtroom. No judge, no jury, just conscience. That evening, Mason returned. Belle wasn't with him. It was just him, wrinkled shirt, eyes crimson from no sleep. I was in the same spot, the little wooden table with 2 cups of tea, as if time hadn't moved since the stormy afternoon. He stood at the door, unsure where to commence. I motioned for him to sit and stated softly, "You don't need to explain anymore. Mason, I comprehend. Now I want to discuss the future and the conditions for it to exist." He nodded, hands clenched until the knuckles went white. I poured tea and slid the cup toward him. "I will assist you," I began. "But not for you, for Ava and Micah." He glanced up, hope and shame mixed in his eyes. I spoke slowly, each word clear. "You put deposits on vehicles, a residence, and silly luxuries I never needed. I can cover those. Consider it defending the youngsters from the financial chaos their parents created." Mason commenced to thank me, but I held up a hand. "Don't thank me yet." I stated I'd assist, not forgive. Every bit of assistance comes with conditions, and you need to comprehend forgiveness is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. I met his eyes, my voice dropping. "First condition, you end this toxic marriage. No half measures, no stalling. If you let Belle drag you down, I'll pull all support. I won't bankroll anyone who chooses to live in the mud." Mason went still. I witnessed his shoulders tremble, but he didn't object. "Second condition," I continued, "you apologize publicly right on the front steps, in front of the neighbors who watched you let your wife humiliate me. Not to make me feel good, but to make you learn responsibility through action, not tears." I paused, took a sip, then stated the last part, the hardest for him. "Third condition, you go to counseling for single fathers. Not because I think you're weak, but because you need to relearn how to be a dad. Ava and Micah deserve a decent example, not a husband who stays silent when their mother is insulted." The air felt thick. Mason didn't speak for a full minute. Then he exhaled, voice small, as if afraid to wake someone. "What about Belle?" I glanced toward the window. The street lights reflected on the glass, throwing a cold gold into the room. "She'll do what people like her always do, scream, blame, threaten, and I'll let her. But if she wants a fight, I'm prepared." As if on cue, a hard, rapid knock hit the door. I didn't need to guess who it was. The door swung open, and Belle walked in, still beautiful, but with clouded eyes, arms folded. She let out a razor-edged laugh. "Perfect." Mommy and son plotting again. Mason stood. "Belle, I told you to stay home. At home so you can let her brainwash you," she turned to me. A curled, contemptuous smile. "What are you doing teaching him conscience? Or is this emotional blackmail?" I stayed composed, letting none of her noise stir me. "I'm establishing the terms for forgiveness. Belle, and you, sadly, aren't on the list." "Oh, really?" She arched a brow, voice sharper. "You think you can control my husband forever? I'll take full custody and half the assets. I have legal rights and I know the law." I gave a small smile and answered evenly, no louder than conversation. "Then sue, Belle. But remember, don't use my fortune to hire your lawyer." Silence stretched. In her eyes, I caught a flicker of confusion, maybe the first time she'd met someone who wasn't afraid. Mason turned, put a hand on my shoulder, and stated, voice rough, "Mom, I choose you and the youngsters." I didn't embrace him or state more. I just nodded. Arthur's aged words rang in my head. A man grows up when he faces consequences. Mason had stepped over that line, and I would let him walk it himself. Belle gazed at her husband, eyes rimmed crimson. "You'll regret this." Mason didn't answer. His silence was the reply she refused to accept. She yanked the door, the metal clanging against the wall. "I won't let this go. You'll lose everything." Her voice cracked, split between hate and fear. I just watched her go and stated, my voice low, "No, Belle, you're the one who's losing. Because you've thrown away the one thing fortune can't purchase. Respect." She snapped, "We'll witness you in court." "I'm not afraid." I smiled, light as a breeze. "Good, because this time the court won't just inquire who's correct. It'll inquire who forgot how to be human." Belle spun on her heel. Her high heels hammered the metal stairs, echoing beat by beat like a countdown to an oncoming legal storm. I sat still and listened until the sound faded, leaving only silence. Mason collapsed into the chair, head in his hands. "I don't even know where to commence." "Commence by keeping your word," I stated. "Tomorrow, go apologize to Penelope and the neighbors who witnessed everything. Tell it all, no excuses." And from now on, you'll pay your own rent, your own tuition, every last expense. I can assist, but I won't bankroll you anymore." He nodded. In those crimson-rimmed eyes, I witnessed a faint light, not the glow of someone forgiven, but of someone beginning to comprehend what starting over means. I stood and refilled his tea. "Drink it so you remember the taste of truth. Bitter at first, clean after." Mason took a small sip and gave a tiny nod. "I comprehend, Mom." Softly I answered, "No, Mason, you're learning to comprehend." When he departed, Savannah's evening sank into a heavy mist. I stood at the window and watched his headlights disappear around the corner. On the table, my notebook lay open to a page half-written. I picked up my pen and added, "Tonight, my son chose what's correct over what's easy. Forgiveness comes with terms because affection isn't a servant. The clack of a liar's heels travels far, but in the end, silence wins." I set the pen down and blew out the candle. In the dark, only the street light framed the window and threw back my face, tired, but at tranquility. Tomorrow, the legal fight would commence. But this time, I wouldn't be alone. The following afternoon, the sun finally broke through Savannah after days of gloom. Light glittered off rain-wet leaves like tinsel. I put on a beige cardigan and picked up my small bag. Inside were the folded lottery ticket, the receipt copy, and my ID, everything I'd prepared the evening before. Attorney Grant Holloway arrived right on time. He opened the vehicle door, as courteous as ever. "Prepared, Lorraine." I smiled. "I've been prepared for 7 years, Grant. Today, I'm just reclaiming what's fair." We reached the Georgia Lottery office at 3:15 p.m. The headquarters stood in a sleek glass building, sky blue reflections running across it. As we walked through the entrance, the soft click of the automatic door sounded ordinary, but to me, it was a lock opening on a brand new chapter. Inside, a staffer led us to a verification room. A middle-aged woman in a gray suit came out to greet us, introducing herself as the Special Prize Records Manager. "Are you the owner of the winning ticket number 78-4539? "Yes," I stated, taking the ticket from its plastic sleeve and laying it gently on the table. Gloved, she inspected it under a special light, matched the signature and serial number, then pulled up security footage from Benny's Corner Mart, the store where I'd purchased the ticket on Ava's birthday. The screen displayed a silver-haired woman in a brown coat signing the back of the ticket. No zoom needed, I knew it was me. "Hull,